He always is Fitz. Fitz, how are you, sir?
I'm all right, and we're about to kick into episode 4 of 4 in the Lindsay Buziak case, and I'm interested to talk more about it tonight and see where it takes us.
Yeah, a little bit of a recap. We're going to talk tonight about the 2008 murder of real estate agent Lindsay Buziak. This presents a classic case for behavioral analysis because of its apparent premeditation, the offender staging, and victim targeting dynamics. The offenders were described as well dressed Caucasian couple with a possible fake accent. They lured Lindsay to a vacant home under the guise of a high end property showing, then killed her in a controlled environment before escaping without leaving usable forensic evidence. Now, tonight isn't about the how, it's about the who and the why, based on certain behavioral triggers and some of the things that we're going to talk about with you, Jeff, both Jim and I. So, without further ado, Jeff, I'd like to welcome you back to the show and acknowledge the 18 plus years of your search for justice. Welcome back, Jeff.
Yes, thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm pleased to be able and honored to be on your show. It has been over 18 long, agonizing, stressful years trying to get justice for the murder of my daughter. In the meantime, the stress certainly has taken its toll. I had open heart surgery about a year and a half ago, triple bypass, and the surgeon said it's all about stress. So here we are, and we're going to pursue this and see where we go with it. And I'm really looking forward to hear what you gentlemen have to say.
Jeff, could I start with? I try to do. I do homework for every podcast. I know Ray does too, and they come in different forms: books, articles, news accounts, other podcasts. And in the last 2 weeks or so, I listened to the entire 8 episodes of a podcast devoted strictly to the murder of Lindsay, and that was called Murder on the Island. I think you're familiar with it.
Well, there's been quite a few, so I'm not sure exactly, but sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just interested in your take on it, um, because they brought in someone at the end. They called her Jane Doe. Someone was involved in a website that someone had set up about Lindsay's case, and but they didn't seem to get this podcast didn't seem to get too much information from you, and I wasn't sure if they asked you to come on. I think it started around 2019, then COVID kicked in, some delays, but then it went to a few more years. I think it dropped in like 2023. So it's the one podcast I listened to on this case, and they've asked questions like we've asked questions, but you didn't seem to have too much of a role in that podcast, and I'm just wondering if there was a reason for that, or do you even remember which one I'm talking about here?
Well, it's coming to me now. The podcast was probably done by a fellow by the name of Xander Sherman. Is
Correct.
that correct?
Yes, it is.
With Capital Media.
Yes.
Yeah, Xander approached me initially with great enthusiasm about digging into Lindsay's unsolved murder, and quite quickly he turned on me and tried to make me out as some kind of villain. And I didn't take that kindly, of course. And so he continued on. I wasn't involved in the podcast, but he had, if we could say, the other side on the podcast that were there to criticize me and try and, discredit me. And I think people understand I have no reason to deceive or manipulate or anything with Lindsay's unsolved murder. It's killing me. All I want here is justice. I have no reason not to tell the truth. I have no reason to try and mislead anybody. Have I used tactics over the years to try and stir the pot and maybe get some information? Yes, a few times, not many. And I learned that from the police, as a matter of fact. When I had a aha moment when they said, "Do you think we catch killers every day by telling the truth?" And I was like, bingo, well, maybe I should do the same thing and put out some misleading info and see what kind of response it gets. So I think that podcast was more or less trying to protect somebody. And as far as the Jane Doe, Sandra Bryant, yes, she worked with me for 7 years while she was on sick leave from Vancouver Island Health Authority, and was totally devoted to the cause, and approached me on the basis that she knew, or she felt she knew, who did it. And she spent 7 years attacking those people on a website that her and another person managed and operated and created, as a matter of fact. And then, for whatever reason, decided to quit, and then blamed everything on me, and went to the other side and apologized, and it's all Jeff's fault of what I did. So it just, as far as I'm concerned, the distraction, which I could go into over and over with Xander Sherman and what went on, and he had a bit of a randy dad, and he associated me to his dad, and it was just it was sick, really. So I distanced myself as much as I could from that whole genre of the Xander Sherman thing. It was just bad, and I don't think they got much of a following. I think because we've been at it for 18 years or whatever it was at that time, most of the people following can see through all the crap that goes on. I think, even that woman, the Jane Doe, let's call her, or whistleblower, I think he called her. She had a partner, and they went off and developed their own website, and they ended up having a fight. And so then her partner developed her own website, which she now operates. And the other woman finally did go away. And because I started naming her, which she thought was absolutely horrendous. And I was basically said, look, you're my enemy. You're out there speaking against me, trying to discredit me. You're not my friend anymore. So if you think I should protect you so that you can attack me, give your head a shake.
I suppose.
Need I say more about that podcast?
No, I just, it seems their biggest problem, Jane Doe, you put a name in there. I didn't know the name before now. There was a website that they claim was in conjunction with you. And it seems at some point they felt that perhaps blaming Shirley and Jason was perhaps not helping the case, and that's where you had a disagreement with them. And I'm not here to criticize you or call you out. I just want our audience to know, there are different sides of the story being reported. There's different. We know things actually that happened. Some things we don't know back in February of 2008. But at the same time, there are different versions and different interpretations of what's happened since then. And while Jane Doe clearly states she felt that Shirley and her son was definitely involved in the murder of Lindsay, they felt as time went on that wasn't the case, and there were some inconsistencies or discrepancies with what was being posted on your end or being stated, and they just wanted to clear that part of the record. So so I just want the audience to be aware of that.
Yeah, fair enough. I think the clear thing here is I've been consistent throughout. I have not changed my path. I have my own personal feelings of who is involved with my daughter's murder, and I'm not afraid to state that, but I don't go about crying that every day. I try and put a mandate on myself to be open to all theories and suggestions and proposals. And believe me, I have received hundreds, thousands, I've never counted over the years, virtually every day. Just before going on this show, I've received a big long message about I know who did it and why. And, I receive that often, and I'm always very open to it. I contact the people. Sometimes I fly out to the coast to speak to them in person, and I listen carefully. As far as I'm concerned, there are 4 groups that know everything about my daughter's murder. There is the conspirators and the murderers. There are the police. There are myself. And there's one other woman who was Jane Doe's partner that I've worked fairly closely with over the years. And yes, we've had a couple on and off occasions, but we're back onto very good speaking terms again, because she does believe that I've maintained my consistency throughout this whole thing. And yes, there's a lawsuit. I'm being sued by Shirley Zalo for libel and slander, which I didn't do, but they're including me because they said I published it on a website that some anonymous people spoke about. And that lawsuit at the moment's not going anywhere that I can tell. Maybe this podcast will fire it up again when I say it's not going anywhere. So as far as that podcast, yes, there are some naysayers out there, but I would say 97%, 98% are certainly on my side. And everybody has their opinion now after 18 years, who they think did it. And it's the majority are certainly leaning in one direction, and always have been. And there was, as far as the whistleblower, there was no influence. We spoke regularly. They ran the website. Yes, I was involved. What culminated in our big argument was not about who did it. It was about my consistent appeal to them to quit arguing with everybody. And I finally had to take control of the website because of that. They both had numerous pseudos. They were losing track of who the hell was who that was posting. And I kept appealing to them to smarten up, quit arguing with people, because basically they were always, Shirley did it. And if anybody came on there that spoke otherwise, they would attack them with various of their pseudos. And finally, the culmination, I mean, it's not funny, but it is, was I called them up and I was like, okay, what the hell's going on here? And I was like, who's this? Who's this? Who's this? Who's this? Who's this? Who's this? It was them. And it turned out they were arguing with each other and themselves because they lost track of who the hell was who. So that's when I took control. It wasn't about, poor Sandra, I had influenced her. Oh no, she was very aggressive on the path she was on and just got tired of the whole thing. And so then I more or less took over control of the site. One of them quit in disgust because she thought I was firing her. And it was just kind of drama, stupidity. And Sandra decided to quit. And I said, okay, quit. I have no problem with that. But you have to remember, Sandra was a very trusted ally of mine. She had my passwords to all emails. She ran the site. She had passwords to the site. She had developed the site herself. And so that all had to get sorted out when we parted. So the two of them went off and established their own site called Murder and Saanich. And the first thing they did was started disparaging me. So I contacted them and said, stop that, or I'm going to name you, because you're not my friends anymore. You're on here telling people I'm a liar and whatever was going on in their heads. And so I named them. And so they got all upset. So they ended up having a big fight and they shut down that site, and Whistleblower went away once and for all for good, which she should have done when she said she was going to quit. Both those people had no connection to Lindsay, no connection to me, no connection to the family. They totally came to me, free will, volunteered, which I get calls all the time from people who say, what can I do to help? And I always tell people, just follow along, see where you fit in, establish your own role. That's what I always tell people. Those two just dove right in. And we were initially working on Facebook. We didn't know what the hell we were doing at the time because it was all new to us. And Facebook started cutting us off because we were naming people. So then I said to them, okay, we have to do our own website, sort it out. And they did. Between the two of them, mostly Sandra, the whistleblower, she developed that site, lindsaybuziakmurder.com. And the two of them administered it. I wasn't an administrator for the longest time. And I'm not saying that to blame anything. We were a bunch of amateurs fumbling along, wanting to get justice for Lindsay, is really what it was. And it all kind of fell apart.
Ray, you
and
retired.
Then Xander got involved.
Okay. I'm just going to say, yeah, Ray, you retired.
And he decided to side with the others.
Let me kick in here for a second, Jeff. It's a different world out there, Ray.
Yeah,
and you retired a few years after me.
Mm-hmm.
But to be a criminal investigator, profiler, like we were, you wore a few different hats in the Philadelphia division. The internet was in its earliest days. I guess cable news was pretty big. I remember the OJ case. Geraldo Rivera was all over the place every night discussing that case. John Benet Ramsey every night discussing that case on TV. But to be in the middle, to be an investigator, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of the Saanich PD investigators with these multiple podcasts going on. Look, we have a podcast, Cold Red, but we're not really an advocacy podcast or activist podcast, if you will. We try to bring guests on, we tell stories, we'll render opinions, but we'll let our listeners and our audience sort of, figure out where they think this is going. We do as many closed cases that are, over and done with, and the bad guys in jail or dead. And, but every once in a while we do a case like this that's open. So I'm just saying it's a different world out there, Ray. And what, Jeff's involvement with these at least two other women on this website, maybe multiple websites, it just can serve to sort of muck up the works in an investigation, looking at it from the law enforcement perspective. But I'll give you some time here, Ray.
Now it
did and it didn't really.
Well, it does. It does when you have a lot of information coming from different sources. It has a tendency to create problems for law enforcement. It does, and I speak to that from my own experience. However, I understand where you're coming from and how you must feel and what your goal is. So our goal tonight is what we want to do. We want to take a look at a couple different things, and we want to talk about some of the behavioral markers in this case based upon what we know. However, you have to realize that what we're talking about is limited because the information we have is limited. When we did this in real life, we would have all of the information. And when you have all the information, you're able to render an opinion or give some insight into things where it would be more exact. And although Jim and I are pretty good at doing this, we did it with the Brown University shooting. We did it in Nancy Guthrie case, and we're pretty good. But the first thing I want to look at here, Jeff, and then I want you to comment on what we're talking about too, is the fact that I believe that Lindsay was specifically selected. And the reason I say that is
absolutely
one of the strongest behavioral markers is the use of a sophisticated ruse. The offenders pose at these as this affluent buyers with a $1 million budget. They contacted her repeatedly with a prepaid phone registered under a false name that was activated shortly before the crime. Those are classic indicators of deliberate targeting and not opportunistic. When you look at her, they knew Lindsay's profession, her work patterns, they knew about her vulnerability, the fact that she showed houses alone. They had access to insider knowledge. Someone within her social or professional uh, geographical orbit, uh, rather than somebody that was random. So this wasn't someone that was random here. And I think that this planning was aligns with instrumental homicide, which means the killing was committed to achieve a particular objective, such as revenge or silencing or some sort of contractual motive. Um, what I would look at these offenders, I would consider them to be organized. They were methodical. They were socially competent, and they were capable of manipulation. And Jim, I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, all those factors are in fact in play here, and yeah, even the number of days involved in this pre-offense behavior is shows you the determination. One or more. Well, we know there were two people at the scene, but at least those two people, if not more. And then we have to switch over in the same sphere, if you will, and we have to look at victimology, and that is, of course, our victim being Lindsay. Why all these things that you stated, Ray, are accurate in terms of her selection, her targeting. Now the question is why, and what did she know? What kind of threat? She's not a physical threat to someone. I mean, she's a healthy 24-year-old woman. But I don't think she's walking around with guns and semi-automatic weapons and a threat to anyone. It has to be internal to Lindsay in something she observed and or stated to someone in the weeks or two prior to that. And Jeff, you told us the week before she had come to Calgary to visit you, and she made a statement. Number one, she was going to break up with Jason, her boyfriend. And number two, if I remember how you said it, she saw something or knew something, and it was big. Unfortunately, though, she couldn't tell you what it was. And
yeah, she said, "Daddy, I saw something I shouldn't have seen." Very clear.
Okay, what does that mean? And other people could have seen that same thing, whatever it was. I can't, and to me, it would be narrowed down to a large quantity of drugs or a body, or conceivably both. And that, and then just her seeing it though, obviously raised flags for the bad guys, we'll call them, and said, all right, we had this real estate woman, this Lindsay, she's the girlfriend of this guy. He hangs around with this guy, and we have this little, thing going here. This thing of ours, as the mafia says, and I'm not saying this was, Italian mob people, but and Lindsay became a detriment. She became an obstacle, someone in the way, because of their not even their known uh, fear of what she may do with whatever she saw or heard, but because of their perceived fear of what she saw or heard. And they just felt that for whatever reason, she had to be eliminated. And I hate to say that, use that term in front of you, Jeff, but you've heard all these words before. And
No, that's fun.
and that's
Absolutely.
and that's and just to follow up with Ray. So now I don't think many people would disagree with what Ray and I just laid out. And you probably don't even have to be a profiler to put that much together. Now the question is, what or why it was in her victimology, and what have the police not learned, or maybe they have learned but haven't released publicly, or maybe they have learned but are somehow suppressing on their own. And I don't know which one of those categories may be accurate, but what what possibly could she have known or seen that would have caused her to be victimized such as this? And Ray, we can talk about the sophistication level of the
Mhm.
setup, but I'll be, in our experience, knifing someone is like at the bottom of the sophistication scale, including 40
Agreed.
to 50 times. We don't even have the exact number of wounds to Lindsay, which again, that sustained aggression or overkill, as they call it, sometimes is indicative of a personal connection and an anger or frustration against the person. So, um, but someone just brought in contractually, or that hit person, which are hit man, hit woman, especially a hit couple, pretty rare in today's world, certainly in North America.
Yes.
But I assume it happens, and it does happen. And to go through this level of sophistication as they did, and but then instead of just again, hate to be graphic, but a quick shot with a small caliber weapon, even a silencer on it, and then in and out. And why not do it that way? Why the knife, which takes a whole lot of work to do? It is not easy to stab someone, and and especially if they are relatively healthy and in decent shape and condition, where they may fight a little bit. Obviously, the element of surprise. I'm sure Lindsay turned her back. One person. Now, let me point this out to you, and that's when the other person started the attack, and then who knows where it went from there. So, I just wanted to follow up on Ray, what you said in terms of tying in these pre-offense behaviors to victimology, and that that still brings us back, though, of course, who did this, but just
Could
as
I just
importantly, for what reason? Go
Jeff,
ahead.
before you go, I want to add one small thing to what Jim said because I think it's very important. When you have mixed gender co-offending in homicides, Jim's right. It's rare. And what that sometimes will suggest is that there's a relationship based partnership, whether it's familial or whether it's romantic, and it could even be a stage deception to um, to kind of gain the trust of the victim or lower the victim's guard that, oh, it's a couple, everything's good. So when you have a female that's present, that's the lure to bring her into the fold so that she begins, oh, and then the foreign accent. The male was probably the one that engaged in the physical attack or at least helped in it. But it's Jim is spot on. But I don't want to take. Go ahead, Jeff. What we talk about what we just said.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that the not only did she see something she shouldn't have seen, and without getting into a theory, I also believe she was distancing herself from the people that were involved in what she had seen that she shouldn't have seen. So it's kind of a twofold thing, in my opinion, that she saw something she shouldn't have seen. It really, really disturbed her. So now she's distancing herself from those people, and that becomes a threat to them, a security risk that their lifestyle is going to be ending if she talks, because now we can see she doesn't want to be part of our fold anymore. She's trying to get away and distance herself. So I think that's an important point in that whole thing. And as far as the couple, there's been different iterations that one of them was transvestite. So was, man dressed up as a girl. We don't know that. That's been a theory that even the police pursued at one point. But what I can tell you is the man did phone her at one point, because she called me and told me. The man called me and said, "Oh, my wife's not feeling well, so she might not be at the showing. I'll just be by myself. Is that okay?" That's very odd for somebody to do that, because I probably know real estate as well as you guys know homicide, because that's been my career since 1980. That was odd, but she let that go. But it did turn out that a couple showed up.
Yeah, no question. The whole couple scenario is what was designed to lower the guard on Lindsay's part, and I wonder. Yeah, that phone call is odd. Why even float that idea? And I'm not sure, Jeff,
Amateur.
was there a secondary phone call that said, "Oh, the woman, my wife will be with me," or did, as far as you know, I forget with the other people that were interviewed, was she sure when she left the office that day she was meeting the couple as opposed to just a man?
No, she wasn't sure.
Okay.
You know,
I just let me just. But what
ahead,
throws this off is how different would this whole matter have been if she took up one or more of her colleagues at the office, including the former Mountie, who is now in retirement, a real estate agent, who offered. And I'm not blaming Lindsay for this. Oh, no, I can handle it. No problem. I'm a professional. I've been doing this for a while. But what would this couple have done then? Would they have killed this guy? Is that how, or were they so confident? Or maybe they just wouldn't have showed up. Maybe they know if she came with someone else, but it seems they were standing out front when Lindsay pulled up. So but could they have possibly known that adamantly and 100% she'd be there on her own? And Jason's floating around. Yeah, I'll be there. I'll meet you there. And I'm not pointing any direct fingers at him in any way here, but this Jason could have showed up in the middle of this whole thing, or while they're walking out the door, no doubt bloody, at least one of them. So sophisticated, but then Ray, you put in, or someone said amateurish. There are mixed sort of emotions here, but not emotion, but mixed findings
behaviors.
here. But nonetheless, we can say these things, but they've successfully gotten away with it for over 18 years.
Jim,
I think the important thing here too is that, but the house was also chosen. That house was chosen, yeah. And it had to be controlled, and it was controlled. So to sort of answer your question about what if somebody else showed up, there was control over that house as part of the plan. There was an individual that was there before 5, and he was there after 5. And we don't know if he left or if he did, when he left. So there was somebody controlling that house. There had to be, because of those variables.
Right.
When I look, and Jim, running back to you, what you said about Lindsay and the possibility that someone could have accompanied her, I thought from early on, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but she anticipated Jeff being with her when she showed this house, or was going to show up during the time when she was showing this house, because there were certain people that said,
"You mean Jason?
Jason, yes." There was people that said to her, the former RCMP officer that said, "Hey, I'll go with you." And she says, "No, it's okay. Jason's going to meet me there." So I'm sure she said that. So that takes it, which is part of the control aspect of things. Now, I'm not saying that Jason was involved in this. I'm just saying that's maybe the reason why she didn't have anybody else go with her.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking on what I know,
she hollered at me because I questioned her. She goes, "Daddy, Jason's going to fucking be there." Like, because I challenged her whether he was going to be there or not. I said, "I'll fly out there if I have to." That's when she hollered at me that he's going to be there. And, I know my daughter. He was going to be there.
Yeah.
but he wasn't for whatever reason.
No, he wasn't there. He wasn't there. You know, one thing that and I don't really know much about the crime scene itself, other than what you said, that one of the ambulance drivers said that it's the bloodiest scene he's ever seen in his whole career, and told the other person not to go in. But I don't know if there's DNA, if there's fingerprints, if there's defensive wounds, or any evidence. But the evidence that I'm aware of points to the offenders being controlled and efficient. That they probably executed quickly, and they probably did it by surprise. When you look at this, which means it was probably an ambush, they probably hit her from behind. Their escape strategy was well planned, and there was no theft, and there was no sexual motive. I don't know, Jim. What do you think?
Well, I'll tell you.
The investigating.
Let me go here real quick.
Not perfect. It was not professional. It was well planned, and they got lucky. Those are his words, not mine.
Whose words? Whose words, Jeff?
Chris Horsley, the detective, police officer Chris Horsley from Saanich Police, who was on the case pretty much from beginning until he retired. He said that. It was very well planned, wasn't professional. They got lucky.
Even if someone or some group felt that Lindsay was a problem, a barrier, she had some sort of information to something that happened in the past or something that was about to happen in the future, they really, as much of the planning as they put into this homicide, and there was a lot with burner phones and fake names and getting a couple involved, possibly a woman, maybe a transvestite, whatever. But they could have staged this to look like something different. And again, Jeff, I'm very conscious this is your daughter, but I'm familiar with other cases in which something happens to usually a woman victim, but the bad guy, and maybe the husband, ex-husband, lover, maybe even a stranger for some reason, they kill the person, but they make it look like it's for some other reason. With no robbery or sexual assault here, right away, that's off the table. So now it's a targeted hit. If they put a little more thought into this, and don't get me wrong, you may still be without your daughter, and 18 years later, it still may not be solved. But if this happened in perhaps her residence, in a car where she was driving, where someone sort of carjacked her, and it could just look like some local thugs, or sex assault people, and all this would be, not all of it, but the police would be looking at this as a sexual assault homicide with no other these implications of what did Lindsay know, what did she see. But because they kind of set it up this way, it's like, all right, well, there's no other choice. Lindsay was targeted, and these two people were there, but they're representing some other group, however big, because she saw something, knows something. It's not just because they want her jewelry or her cell phone or her car, or certainly, like I said, a sexual assault. That whole part of the case would have been so much, it wouldn't have been hard to set up that whole subterfuge or that staging to make it look that way. So now it goes back to, all right, this is how they chose to target her and kill her. Is this the message we want to send to some other people at the same time in Saanich and the island where this crime occurred? So sometimes you can overthink these things, or sometimes you just cut right to the core. They could have done this easier with the suspicion just being some rando that goes around raping women, and this one went bad. I'm not sure if the rapes in the area or not, and I'm not saying I wish that to happen to her at all, but they could have made it look like a sex crime. I'm going to tell you how many cases Ray and I worked. It turns out to be the husband that killed the ex-wife, estranged wife, whatever, and he takes her panties off and takes her bra off and stuff. And when the body's found, it never was a sex crime. It's staged that way. But of course, there's no doubt other people that have gotten away with staging crimes like that, or at least confusing the investigators. But these people made it very clear, we're targeting this woman. It's for a specific reason. We don't want anything. We don't want sex. We don't want money, profit, any lucre involved with her. So they make it very clear it's for something she's seen or something she heard, something she knows. And that only then puts, to me, more pressure on the people who may be behind this. But again, 18 years later, they're unidentified.
Jim, I think the offenders in this situation are probably nonviolent, or they probably have committed prior nonviolent deception type crimes. They may be capable of extreme violence when they're properly motivated by money. I don't think the offenders are from Saanich or the immediate area. I think they were brought in from outside. But whatever they do, they could blend in very easily to conventional social roles. That's why nobody knows anybody or anybody speaking of this except for the very few people that knew this was going to happen. And those individuals, brought somebody from the outside in. That's based upon what I know, and that's very limited, the information I know, but I just don't think they're from the general area, because you know how people talk, and there's only very few people that know about this. But yet your point is well taken, where you said these individuals may have been trying to send a message, and thus the reason why a lot of individuals are a little apprehensive about coming forward and talking out about this case for fear of retribution from somebody or something. What do you think, Jeff?
Absolutely, that is the case. Exactly. That Lindsay's girlfriends are afraid to peep a word because they think they're next. And other people feel the same. I had a very good friend of mine, female, leave Victoria because she said, I don't feel safe there anymore after Lindsay's unsolved murder. I'm leaving. And she moved away. Certainly, for whatever reason that it's still dragging on, they've accomplished their goal. They eliminated Lindsay, and they got people to keep their mouths shut. So kudos to them. I think their biggest problem is me. I just won't shut up, and I won't give up. So I've been told more than once there's a hit on me. I got used to it now. And I won't stop because I think everybody just wants to lift the carpet and sweep it under, and let's get on with our lives. Just another chick. See you later. The girlfriends are terrified. They want nothing more than to see whoever was involved arrested, charged, and convicted. We all do, really. The community does. And I'm not going to stop, because even the police, who, you rightly protect them a bit, that with my interference, many of them, most of them have told me, keep doing what you're doing. If it wasn't for you, this would have been over a long time ago, because they certainly don't budget for this. But we got this pesky father out there that's latched onto it like a dog to a bone and won't let go. So we have to do something year after year. And so they do. They have DNA. Like, I talk to them monthly. So it's not like we're enemies. I'm not kind to them because I don't feel they need 18 years to do the job, blah, blah, blah. They have DNA. They're investigating that supposedly in a top lab in the US right now. They've done 3 stages. They're happy with the results. They're continuing on. So they tell me. So, will there be a conclusion? Yes. I don't think any other way, and I won't. There's going to be resolution.
That's good. That's good, Jeff. I want to do something here we don't usually do. And Jim, with your permission, one of our producers reached out and asked if we want to take live uh, questions from the listening audience. And I think we should. You guys okay with that?
I am.
Matt, go ahead, fire away. I guess it'll pop on our screen here. Can investigations do a photo analysis of a guy without backpack versus a guy with backpack and determine if they are the same person? Well, this question seems it's more geared towards the Guthrie case than it is towards this case.
So we can come back to that at some point.
From that, we can come back to that at a later time. Is there another question that relates to this case?
I know we have a decent sized live audience, but I'm not sure they were even going to put some questions out like that.
Okay.
Right church, wrong pew for that last questioner. So we'll come back with that. I had a thought I was going to bring up before, but yeah, I just can't wrap my head around how this could go on this long. But I can't. Well, I know what I was going to ask you, Jeff. No one, certainly among the three of us, but certainly probably anywhere else besides maybe your ex-wife and some friends of Lindsay, know her better than you do. As well as you knew her, if she opened a door or went into a storage area and saw something, we'll just keep it very basics. A body, we'll throw in a big pile of money or a big pile of drugs. How do you think she would handle that? What would be her first reaction? Assuming there's other people around her, maybe in an adjacent room, would she out, what the hell is this? Or would she keep it quiet? In other words, how many people would know if they weren't right next to her? Would they know what she saw? Is she the type that would blurt something out, or would she say, holy shit, I got to get out of here? What do you think?
What do I think? Yes, know my daughter well. She told me pretty much everything that went on in her life. And, it's interesting you asked that question because I get asked lots, or I get people telling me, oh, she saw a bunch of drugs or a bunch of money. I actually reached out to one of her girlfriends and some other women, especially in the Victoria area, because I was just there. And I said, would you freak out if you saw a bunch of drugs? And they go, no, we've all seen drugs. That's no big deal nowadays, especially in Victoria, small little place. They all saw drugs and they all saw cash. So that wasn't such a big deal because of the small place. They'd go to clubs. The club would end up going to a party. Party would be at some drug dealer's house. They'd see a bunch of drugs and cash. It wasn't uncommon, especially Lindsay was a very attractive young woman, and all her girlfriends were 10s. I've always said that they were 10s, 11s. It was very interesting when they got together to travel. They were like some kind of aristocracy or something. They just walked freely wherever they went. If they were in a group, there was no such thing as lineups or anything like that. When they walked in, it was just everything stopped and they went in. So they saw lots of things because of that in their time. What would freak Lindsay out is, yes, body, harm against another human being. So human trafficking, sexual abuse, somebody being abused. And she had told me a couple times about things that she was very uncomfortable about involving people, not human trafficking, but just uncomfortable the way people were being treated. You have to remember, she grew up not in a hostile, violent home or anything like that. Yes, we divorced, but it wasn't because of, physical violence or anything like that. They were loved to death, those my children. So it would have to have been a body, a murder, because she was terrified. Drugs and money wouldn't have terrified her. They would have upset her, but not terrified. She was terrified. So my speculation is body, murder, human trafficking of young women. That would really disturb her. Those would be my top 3 picks.
Well, Jeff, you didn't hide anything from us the first episode of Cold Red when you were on 4 weeks ago now. Not every case Ray and I have worked over the years, in fact, few of them, involved homicide victims that, quite frankly, by your own admission, were hanging out with drug dealers. That's the big time. And that is when the propensity for violence definitely increases. I'm not blaming Lindsay here. She did nothing wrong and didn't deserve what happened to her. But she put herself out there in a world where these types of things sometimes happen. And you don't usually hear of young, attractive women who aren't directly involved in the trade being murdered, such as this. It's usually the guys, the mules, the runners ripping somebody off, and and that's why, and we're going to be wrapping up here in a bit, but that's why this all has to come down to her death as a result of the high-level drug world, and her foot in the door of that, not doing anything illegal on her part, but these men and perhaps some other women who were engaged in this fast lifestyle, this illegal lifestyle, and she was at a place she shouldn't have been. She saw something, maybe said something. She became a risk, and she had to be eliminated. And I know we've gone on other directions here. We've gone other directions here with who are likely suspects. Why didn't this person show up at the showing, et cetera, et cetera? But you can't tell me everything else we know about this case. Was no theft. There was no one, emptied her bank account afterwards or made her, hit the ATM, took her car. There was no sexual assault. This is because she saw something and knew something that she shouldn't, because she was indirectly involved in the world of drug trafficking, and it's a shame. I don't think this would have happened to her if she wasn't necessarily in that world, and but that doesn't make this case
I'm going
any
to run
less
to her
important.
defense here.
Less important than it should be.
Yeah,
resolved.
I'm going to come to her defense here because I am being offended a little bit by what you said. She was not involved in the criminal world whatsoever, and Saanich police have clearly stated that. She stumbled across something. So she wasn't out partying. She wasn't a party girl. She wasn't involved with the drug trade. She hated drug dealers. But growing up in Victoria, which you gentlemen don't understand, it's 1 degree of separation there. You come across that stuff in your travel because it's a small community with a big city atmosphere, but it's very small. So you stumble across that and you make choices not to go there again. And she was living that lifestyle. She was absolutely focused on her career. She was distancing herself from a certain group of people because they were skirting the edge of that lifestyle, and that wasn't her style. She was distancing herself from that. That was very, very clear. That isn't who Lindsay was. And I take offense to anybody insinuating that, she was involved and mixed and mingled with those people. No.
Well, let me add this to what both you just said. While the exact nature of what Lindsay believed she saw remains unknown, it definitely suggests that it likely involved perceived sensitive knowledge. Her pre-offense
Yes.
disclosure to you is significant because it indicates awareness of potential risk by her, which aligns with the homicide that appears to be targeted, instrumental, and carefully orchestrated. Now, it's plausible that whatever she witnessed, Jeff, or whatever the offender's fear she had witnessed, contributed or could indeed contribute to her motive for murder, particularly if the offenders perceived her as a potential threat to their secrecy, reputation, and or criminal enterprise. I mean, I think that says it without saying she was involved in anything, because we don't know that.
And I
We
never
have
said
no
that, by the
idea.
way.
And Jim never said that. That's not what Jim said. But and if you were offended by that, we
Yeah.
both apologize
Sorry you're
for that.
offended, but that's not what I meant. She's
But
on the
I believe,
periphery and saw something she shouldn't have seen.
yeah.
Now, should she have been in that
Right.
periphery?
I
It
just
seems
wanted
she
to
was trying to.
clarify.
That's fine, and I respect you as a father. I would expect nothing less from you. She was in that periphery,
Yeah.
maybe once or twice, and she said, "I got to get out of here." But that once or twice was maybe
Right.
what sealed her fate. I don't know, and we don't know exactly why or for what reason, of
Right.
course. But it's involving some badass drug dealers that somehow saw her as a threat, even if she just put her foot in the door, literally or figuratively, of what they were doing, and saw whatever that they didn't intend her to see. She had to then. She was a risk then. She was a liability, and she had to be eliminated, and she was.
There is a question that came
Right.
across. There's a
And
question. There's a question that came across. I don't know if you guys all saw it, but the question was, can private investigators move this case along a little bit better than the police can? Jim, I'll open that up to you if you want, or I'll take it. And then we'll get to you, Jeff.
I'll take it.
Yeah, Jeff. Let's start with
Go
Jeff.
ahead, Jeff.
Okay. Thank you. I have engaged private investigators. The first one was scared off by Saanich police and actually ordered by letter to cease and desist, or they would be charged and lose their license because they were interfering with a criminal investigation. And in Canada, it's against the law to interfere with a criminal investigation. The second one that I engaged just turned out to be a money pit and a bit crazy. But they did make some progress, and we did get some information.
I don't think I can add to that. I mean, there's been some PIs that have helped in cases, some that hurt. It sounds like at best, Jeff, maybe neutral in your case.
Well, what happens there is they have to get the cooperation of the police department to be able to get involved after a certain period. And Saanich police refuse that. They won't let anybody touch that file. So they attack the private investigators by saying, stay away. You're getting your nose into an active criminal investigation, and that's against the law. We will pull your license. And in Canada, in BC, the police can withdraw that license without having to go to court or whatever it is. So the PIs pay attention to that.
Well, that says it all right there.
I don't think it works that way in the U.S., Ray.
It does not.
Investigators.
It does not.
You don't need to have authority by the police to investigate. Whether they invite you in or not, that's a different story. And so, yeah, and Canada seems to have its own rules. And Jeff, I'd probably do the same thing if I was you in that situation, try to get on the inside. with someone who maybe is a former cop or former law enforcement, or at least has ties there. But
Yeah.
that can be the money pit that you probably described too.
You know, here at Cold Red, we have an open door policy, and both Fitz and I, while this is our final part of the series, the case file remains active for Lindsay on Cold Red. With that said, I want to lay out an invitation to law enforcement, active and retired. You have an invitation to share your insights, whether it's on the record or off the record. I would, if I was involved in an 18-year-old, in my estimation, cold case, you can't tell me this is active, this is cold. I would look for help from any direction in which I could obtain it. And if I could put something out there, or if I knew people would come to provide information that may open a door that was previously closed, I would welcome it with open arms. And I'm not just opening this to law enforcement, I'm opening this to the public. If you have any information, I don't care how small it is, we encourage you to reach out to us. And a lot of times people say, well, I'm not going to go on there with my picture on there and then my voice. Look, we have the ability to facilitate private and anonymous information that people provide us. If you're afraid to go to authorities, we're not going to mention your name. We don't have to do that. Plus, we're in another country. But the thing is that if you have something that can help this case, you know, we are pleading you to reach out to us here at coldredpodcast.com or email us at info at coldredpodcast.com. We would love to hear from you. We think it's important that this thing it will never, ever end until someone's in handcuffs. And Jim and I want that as much as Jeff does. But we haven't been battling this thing for 18 years. Imagine, put yourself, and when we pray to God, this never happens to anybody, but put yourself in the shoes of a father who's lost his daughter and has been fighting for 18 years to bring her home. I mean, all he wants is justice for Lindsay. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's commendable. And you have my support, Jeff. Any final thoughts from you, Jeff?
Yeah, I'd just like to follow up on that people have to understand that this isn't an obsession with me from an angry father. This is my duty as a father, as a man, and as a citizen. Especially now that I'm 71 years old, I consider myself an elder. And as that, I have responsibilities to society. And this happens to be one of my responsibilities, is to see that justice is served for a wonderful young woman who went to work one day and was absolutely slaughtered while she was at work. People need to understand that this has further reaching than, oh, some chick saw something she shouldn't have seen, and so the guys took her out. It's a way more than that. This is a wonderful young lady going through her life, trying to establish herself in a very honest, hardworking way. She was very focused on her career. The only thing she didn't have sorted out was her partner. And that's not uncommon with young women. She was trying to sort that out, whether it was with who she was with or not. That didn't seem to be working. That's what was missing in her life. Her career was set. She was becoming very successful. And somebody decided, for whatever reasons that we can speculate on, that her life should end. justice needs to be served in that. And I will make sure that happens, or certainly spend the rest of my life seeing that it does happen as my duty to do that. And to this day, other people that aren't in my shoes have to understand the simplest things, because I still work in real estate. And people ask me, oh, how many kids do you have? I almost cry because I don't know how to answer that fucking question. Because I can't eliminate Lindsay from my fucking life. And I hesitate. And I go, I give them a number. And then, of course, they want to know details. And then I have to introduce them to the whole horrific fucking story. I hate it. I want justice. Lindsay deserves justice. The community deserves justice. This isn't an angry father thing. This isn't a family deserves this. This is a fucking community issue. We've got killers and conspirators freely skipping around Victoria laughing at the police and everybody else. That's what we have there. That's the reality. It's not funny. It's not, oh, the community's not in danger. Bull crap. Somebody has taken a life. They'll do it again. I used to say that if they did it once, they'll do it again. Who says Lindsay wasn't the again? And they've done it before. This must be solved. So anybody out there with information, we need it. We need to put this to bed. We need the message out there is you can't go around killing people and get away with it. You're going to be caught. You're going to be put away and you're going to be punished. That's the message out there, not, oh, fuck, just kill her. You can get away with it. That's the message out there right now. Don't worry about it. They'll never solve it. Yeah, we will. We will.
Let me close it out with a few things I said in the last week or two. In order to best solve this case, from the macro approach, I really think another agency should take over this investigation, ideally RCMP. In Canada, of course, that would be the ideal scenario. Doesn't mean that, Saanich PD couldn't have an investigator on the task force, but they should start from scratch and go through everything here. The micro perspective to this would be find out what happened to the missing person. I forget his first name, last
Kyle?
name McDonald.
Kyle
Right?
McDonald. I think it's Kyle McDonald. Is that right,
Yeah.
Jeff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, it
Again,
is.
easier said than done, but maybe put a lot more work into that case and what his victimology was, what he was involved with. And it wouldn't surprise me whatever innocent drug connection that Lindsay walked into accidentally, thought of, some friends of friends of friends, and then said, well, I got to get out of here. And Jeff, that's all I ever meant. I wasn't saying she was involved in anything directly, but all of a sudden she's with a few people over a month or two, and then all of a sudden she sees something, hears something, and she became this liability. Solve that McDonald case. Go back to that drug case. There was a big cocaine bust with months before this in late 2007, before Lindsay was killed in February of 2008. Boy, find some of those people there, see what kind of time they're serving, or if their kids are now serving time for drug offenses, and just make a deal to them. Tell us what you know about Lindsay's murder, and we can, get you out of here, or give someone else a break, or maybe a reward of some sort. I know the numbers aren't that high right now in that regard, but you put those three factors together: a new investigators, new agency, the whole drug thing, including Kyle McDonald, and I think this case this case would have the potential of being solved. And folks, you can call us or contact us at Cold Red. Certainly the authorities at Saanich PD. Jeff, I'm not sure how you feel about that part. I would hope they would actively work on this type of information that would come in. But if anyone wants to back it up and send it to us, we can go from there too. We're not investigators anymore, and we're in a whole different country. And Ray, we don't make any secrets of that. So, but we certainly could pass the information on to others. So, Jeff, no one has a right to judge you for what you did or didn't do over the last 18 years. I'm certainly not. I'm not judging Lindsay either. You've had hell come down on you in February of 2008, and you've tried to work with it every single day. And I feel for you. I sympathize with you. And I hope none of our listeners ever have to go through what you did. But we appreciate you coming on 4 weeks in a row. And maybe you didn't always hear things that you would like, but we just want to throw everything out there that we can, maybe to solve this case. And that's how we look at these things. And sometimes just coming across and laying some things out just for other people to hear and think about can help resolve these. So I want to thank you, Jeff, again. And this doesn't end here. We have other information. We'll be in touch with you if we hear stuff. And Ray, I know you said the same thing. So everyone, thanks for listening to this episode, the fourth of 4 episodes on the murder of Lindsay Buziak. And check us out on coldredpodcast.com. Like and subscribe, share, all that type of stuff. Thanks to Matt Robinson, Matt McLaughlin, Rick Schilling, our music director. The first 2 guys are our producers. And everyone, thanks again for listening, watching us on Cold Red, live or after the fact. And we will see you next time on Cold Red.